Welcome back to the Break the Cycle Podcast. This episode is on self-acceptance. We are here with Mrs. Zohreh. She's filling in for Kyla. We talk all about various parts of self-acceptance, the cultural elements, being first-gen American, coming in with also different dynamics within self-acceptance, whether that is accepting yourself in a romantic setting versus work versus other areas of your own life. We do deep dive into some of our stories of self-acceptance. We also talk a little bit about self-disrespect, and do you need to disrespect yourself to actually find self-respect? So buckle up. We are talking about how to love yourself in ways that we have found acceptance in our own lives. Let's welcome Zohreh Cheyenne to the podcast. Hey, Zohreh. What up, Zohreh?
What's up, Zohreh?
We love you, Zohreh.
So it's an honor to be here.
Yeah. It's an honor to have you on here.
Yeah.
You're a British mother in the West.
It's about time.
Yeah.
Zohreh's a day one for us.
Literally day one.
Yeah.
We are like way back there on day one.
Aww.
We got connected and started working together. I think it's been like three years, right?
Yeah.
And now you sit as the head of the care coordination here at the Cycle team.
Yeah.
So basically speaking to patients, speaking to potential new clients, like clinics that we work with. But you're one of the most empathetic people that I have ever come across. And yeah, I'm super grateful that we get to spend every day with you. It's like so nice, honestly.
I'm very blessed and lucky to be working with two amazing, highly intelligent and warm men.
Love
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, we're big.
Let's start with day one. How did you meet Zohreh?
Let's run it back. So I met Zohreh where I was doing some research at UCLA. I was very interested. And then I started to learn more about psychedelic therapy. And then I realized that ketamine therapy is seen as like a quote unquote synthetic psychedelic, or gave psychedelic like effects. And then realized that they were offering these treatments all throughout the United States. I was living in Brentwood at the time, which is in near Santa Monica, and there was a local clinic that I just Googled, and it was a ketamine clinic, and I was super fascinated, so I just walked myself into the clinic, and I met this beautiful British woman. We talked for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like
I think more.
Yeah, it was literally like a 2-hour chat, and I was like, what?
What are you guys talking about?
Everything.
Yeah.
Life, family, everything, where we've traveled.
Single
right?
mother, that was like a big thing.
Yeah.
Single mother. We just connected. It was weird. It was like I've known Elijah for years.
Yeah.
And it just felt like I was meant to connect with him.
Yeah. And is that how you approach like a lot of the people that came into the clinic? Like you would just ultimately try to learn about them and talk about anything and everything that they're going through or have been through, etc.?
Yeah, I love it. I love I'm always curious. I'm always curious about people's background, and I love listening to them and just hearing them, and then you find common ground,
Yeah.
But there's certain people where you just have that connection, you know, and you feel like, okay, I can't lose them.
Yeah.
So
Did I meet them in a past life?
Yes.
So you had like a peculiar affinity for Elijah that you otherwise wouldn't have with another pedestrian bystander walking past the clinic, right?
Exactly.
There
What
was
a way to say it.
There was a hint. There was a whisper in the back of your ear. Who is this little leprechaun man?
Yeah.
coming into the
Yeah.
clinic?
I gave her a pot of gold
Where
and went
is the
skipping
pot of
away.
gold?
You're also part leprechaun. We found out you're 1% Irish. So
Yeah.
you also have a small pot of gold.
Yeah.
Shout out to the redheads out there.
You connect really well with Elijah. You have an hour and a half chat right out the gate. And then what's next? Elijah, are you curious about pursuing treatment? Are you trying to work there?
No, she literally was like, do you want a job here? And I was
I
on
was
the
like,
spot,
don't
first time.
go away. Don't walk away.
Yeah.
Elijah, you want a job here? I was like, I can't lose this connection.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And I was like, absolutely, mama, let's do it. Like, let's run it. So you put me in touch with the boss, and then I ended up having a conversation with him, and things went well. And then I started working there like shortly after. It's probably like a week. I started off on weekends, and this was an intravenous ketamine clinic. So they basically offer like IVs, like almost like vitamin IVs, but they put ketamine in it. And I was very fascinated on what that looked like. And that was like the first step into like the world of mental health and I guess utilizing mind altering substances to treat mental health. I remember people would come out and they would talk about grief, or they would talk about like, I just saw my dead mother. They would talk about just like they'd be sobbing in the chair. Like you would see these such visceral reactions, and it was like, what the hell is even that? How is that happening?
Yeah.
And it was just so surprising to me that you would see these people almost like crumble and reform in a matter of 45 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah. They say like in order to be reborn, you know, a part of yourself has to die. And I think it's interesting because in the clinical setting, it's like the substance, well, regardless if it's ketamine, Spravato, TMS, etc., is like such a catalyst for transformation. You know, it's like the nature of the job is like, you're not like a licensed mental health professional per se, but you're having such broad discussions with these individuals and connecting and supporting them through their healing journey. It's so transformative.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
It is. There was many times where they wanted me to sit in the room with them while they're doing the
loved
treatment.
Zohreh.
Really?
Loved her.
Holding my hands, and it was an honor for me because I was part of their journey, you know? So it made me feel really, really special, that they wanted me to be part of their healing journey. So,
and I feel like you're also an empath as well. So you'd sit there and take a lot of that energy.
Yeah.
And you were so good at it and everyone connected. But I did see at times you were just also so exhausted, because it's like you would basically, everyone would talk to you and come and just open up their emotional closet and just like take their baggage and almost like put it on top of you, and not in a way that is bad, but almost like finally I could open up and talk to someone about this.
Yeah.
So that position, I really feel like you were stretched in a different way.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when I'd go home and go to bed, I'd sleep so well at night because I was like, I'm doing something, I'm impacting people in a positive way.
Yeah.
And that just gave me energy for the next day, So, it was, for me, like just knowing that I'm helping people every day, and listening to them and listening to their problems. That's just, that's all I need. That's all I need. So.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because obviously the medicine has its like chemical effects on the brain, in releasing glutamate and being able to suppress depression, anxiety, PTSD, etc. But also there is an aspect of being able to feel accepted by the people that you're going to receive the treatment from and being understood by them, right? And the staff is such a complementary aspect to having a successful treatment series. And I think you're really a testament to that.
Yeah.
Which is like a perfect segue into today's, conversation of self-acceptance. And I think a lot of people were obviously seeking acceptance from you and support from the clinic and being understood. But ultimately you were looking to derive a form of self-acceptance through these treatments and helping them accept their past and their trauma, right? And so how was that like experience, and what sort of methodologies did you enact when you were, whether you were in the treatment room with these people or just telling them about the treatment to help them like accept, their past and their trauma?
Well, a lot of them didn't have any hope when they walked into the clinic. They're like, it's not, nothing's going to work for us. It's not. And I would explain that we've had many people come in feeling the same way and doing the treatment and feeling great. Later on, we had people come in that can't even get out of bed to go to work, and now they have a job and they're doing well. And so they need to hear that. They need to hear other people's stories, and also like I can relate to a lot of them because I've been through my own trauma. So when I speak about myself and what I went through, they feel like, okay, this is, a lot of people are going through this. It's not just me, And you can see that they don't accept themselves. You can see they don't love themselves, and it's a shame because when you are at a place, when you were at where they are, and now you're at a place where you love yourself, which I am. I'm in a good place now. I want them to get there too, so like, I tell them my story, and then they decide to do the treatment, and they trust me, they trust that it's going to work, and
it's really interesting. Were there certain parts like throughout your life, because you're a mother now, I feel like you've seen a lot of life, that defined like self-acceptance for you? Like, was there a definitive moment where you're like, no, this is like, I have to have my own back, like I have to love me fully?
Yeah, but I think it came gradually,
okay,
and it got better and better and better gradually. But yeah, I think it's extremely important to work on that. If you don't feel like, you love, if you feel like you're not deserving of a good life, you have to work on that first, and put yourself first, and then everything else falls into place.
Yeah, for sure. It's so easy, I feel like, especially transitioning into adulthood, trying to find your footing in a career, a relationship, whatever it may be, to just feel weighed down by the world and the oppositional forces, right? And just like, you have to really be able to find the fire within to supersede them, and to be able to build momentum and get a good stride, and feel like you ultimately accept yourself. But I think what you alluded to, which is like, you have to have your own back at the end of the day, right? Because those oppositional forces, whether it's not getting the job or the relationship not panning out, they're going to happen. They're inevitable in everyone's life. But it's a matter of having your own back, right? In an emotional and an energetic sense, and giving yourself that self-acceptance ultimately, and that reassurance. How did you go about that, Elijah, in your transitional phase? Because obviously, as you made your way into the ketamine industry, met Zohreh, etc., like, that must have been scary, right? Making that leap into a new industry and trying to find your identity and your footing within the space. How did you give yourself that form of reassurance and self-acceptance?
I don't know why I feel like there was like a natural wisdom that was bestowed upon me. Maybe it was from a higher above, but it was like, you got to taste all the flavors, or you have to try, like constantly trying things. So I think that there was like a tipping point where I was like, all this came together, but I was just really genuinely like following my interests. I mean, both of y'all know I literally like stopped working at like a 6-figure job making $100,000 plus to work as a security guard to figure out what I wanted to do, right? And I literally sat there and I read as much as I could, and I learned as much as I could. And then whenever there was an interest that kept kind of coming up, I was like, let me follow this, let me kind of move towards this. And then I ended up finding some of the mind altering substances like psychedelics, and I initially was like, whoa, what are these things? But then I kind of pulled back and I was like, no, this is interesting, let me learn a little bit more. And I think following interest is always huge, and putting yourself out there. And the more that you put yourself out there in uncomfortable situations, whether that was like at the clinic and just having a chat, or like even at UCLA, like I remember, like I went to Pepperdine, I graduated with like a 2.4 GPA. Like I was not a smart person, like on paper per se. And then I was like I was reading about these fMRI machines that would basically like read brain scans. And I was like, wow, that's like really fascinating. I messaged everyone in the Santa Monica area trying to find these fMRI machines, and then no one would respond to me. So then I turned my efforts to UCLA, and I kept messaging and trying and messaging and trying. And finally I got in with a professor, and I remember showing up the first day, full imposter syndrome. I'm like, neuropsychology at UCLA, like how is that even possible? Like I'm not smart enough to do this. And I showed up, and then I just fucking faked it, I just really just put a mask on, and I was like, I am now this character. I'm going to choose this skin, and I'm going to show up like a little UCLA kid. I got my Bruin shirt, and this is my character for this X amount of time, Right. So I think self-acceptance is also part of like literally just like faking that confidence as well at times. Because I feel like when I try to accept myself, the masks act as almost like a stepping stone to then getting confident, but also shedding layers in that process.
Sure. No, 100%. And I think you mentioned something where it's like, I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but ultimately I showed up, right? And I think it's fair to say organizationally, everyone can agree that you're a very persistent, headstrong, and confident person, right? And when you want something, you'll show up and you'll fake it till you make it until you're able to achieve it and you learn what you need to, right? But for someone who's maybe not as headstrong or maybe doesn't have that intrinsic confidence or the ability to take the leap of faith, if you will, and put on the mask, what would you say to that person in terms of how to cultivate that, right? Because I think a part of it is intrinsic in just terms of like how you were raised and your family and, you know, where you're trying to go. Yeah. But then a part of it is also like you have to be able to have that self-talk and those beliefs. So what sort of practices or affirmations would you say are like a good way of developing that?
Great question. Positive self-talk is something that I always do. We will go on runs. I mentioned this at a past episode. I talk to myself. I'm like, you are strong. You are confident. You are endurance. Endurance is you. Like speaking to myself as the third person, coaching myself. PMA playlist on Spotify, positive mental attitude. I just like rock the positive jams. Kanye, quite controversial. Love his music. He is like a morning espresso shot and he's like, good life better than the life we live. So also kind of having those types of affirmations. And also I guess realizing like perspective, two things. One is no one knows what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah.
Like literally everyone's just trying to show up. And the older that I get, the more I realize everyone is faking it.
Yeah.
I'm like, they don't know.
It's so true. As an entrepreneur, you meet other entrepreneurs and everyone's like, we are just flying by the seat of our pants.
What the hell are we even doing? And then also I think, you know, Zohreh and I talked about this prior. It's like an age thing. It comes with time. Like you see kind of different like experiences or you meet different people. And the more that you show up, the more confident that you become. And then you go through some hardships, you know?
For sure.
And you're like, I got over that. You know, I may have been down bad for like fucking 9 months, but like I got over it and I could do it again. So I think that helps with like within acceptance is confidence. And I think when you build confidence, you start to accept yourself.
100%.
Do you feel similar? Zohreh?
Yeah. How do you think?
So when I was asked to open and run the ketamine clinic, I was like, what is that?
Okay, tell me more about your background. Like, how did you even get there?
I was minding my own business in Laguna Beach, having a good time. Like I was by the beach and I got a phone call from a friend that's an anesthesiologist. And he said, I want to open up a ketamine clinic and I want you to, you know, I want to speak to you because I'm looking for someone to run the clinic. And I said, but I don't know what that is. And he goes, why don't you do some research, read up on it? And then when we meet, we'll talk. So I read about it. I was like, what is this? I didn't know anything about psychedelics.
Had you never had tried them?
No.
Wow.
Never. No, not back then.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but it was interesting to me. I was like this. And then I was like, why would they want me to, when I have no clue? And it was because I have a background. This is so funny because it's completely the opposite.
Yeah.
I opened and ran a plastic surgery office in Beverly Hills. Okay. And I loved working with the plastic surgeon. He was amazing, but I did not like that space. I was miserable. You know, I was miserable in Beverly Hills.
Why?
Seeing all these. I just thought it was very superficial. It was sad, like all these beautiful girls coming in, you know, and you can tell that they're not happy on the inside.
They're not accepting themselves.
Yeah, they're not accepting themselves.
Yeah, and those people got money, you know, and it's so funny because the people on the outside who like don't have money, they're like, oh, they got it all. They're self-accepting, they're self-loving, they're confident, and they come in. I mean, I saw it a little bit at the ketamine clinic. I would love to hear more of your experiences with the plastic surgeon, but like they were so insecure, and they were riding up in like the nice bag and on the seat. They're driving the Range Rovers, and they need more self-acceptance than anybody.
Yeah, you can't buy it. You cannot buy self-acceptance. Right?
No, you cannot. And you can tell they're very, very sad on the inside, you know, talking to them. Yeah. And, you know, they would open up to me then too, because I am who I am. I like to talk to people and learn more about them. And it was really sad. And I was like, you're spending all this money on the outside. Spend some money for the inside. You know, go to a therapist. I didn't know what ketamine was. There was psychedelics back then. But like, spend some money on therapy or go on a retreat, something, you know. Yeah. Don't keep spending all this money on your looks, you know. But I wanted to get out of that space, which I eventually did. And and then I realized when I started working, working at the clinic, I realized this is my path. This is my path. This is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be helping people heal. And, that I realized that, don't be scared of trying new things. Like happiness is on the other side of fear, just face the fear. I promise you happiness will come. So that's how I live my life, and it's worked out, and I'm here with you guys. So.
Yeah, I think that you're so right. Like there's a correlation between fear and self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Like the more that you could work through that said fear, the more self-acceptance comes.
And it's almost like triumphing that fear is what actually generates it. Like it's not like you mentioned, you can't buy it, right? It's something that's like ephemeral. It's not something that is actually like purchasable, or there's a solid roadmap to it. It's literally like whatever obstacles or hurdles are presenting themselves in your life, being able to at least move one step forward every day, show up. Honestly, showing up is at least 50% of it.
For sure.
Is like, that's what ultimately derives self-acceptance.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating with self-acceptance is you could accept yourself in various areas of your life, right? Like you could be like fully self-accepting in a social situation, right? Or fully self-accepting in a work situation, fully self-accepting in like your love life, right? So it's fascinating how like you could maybe show up in certain areas and derive like a lot of value or a lot of confidence, and then in other areas you could maybe be like lacking in certain like aspects of self-acceptance.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a very multidimensional concept, right? Where you have to look at it. I mean, they say that there's like 7 real aspects to life. It's like the social, financial, the relational, the emotional, mental, the physical, and the familial, I think. But all those aspects within them have these little micro self-acceptance permutations where you have to like be able to your point, when you're not like succeeding in a certain vertical, being able to work towards that, surmounting that fear, and being able to be holistically self-accepting, right?
Where do you feel like you, out of those 7 or just in general, where do you feel that you accept yourself the most and you accept yourself the least?
Yeah, that's a solid question. I would say like on a physical basis, in terms of like my working out and my capabilities to do backflips and things like that, and like my abilities to be physically like healthy, I would say that's where I really accept myself. But I would say in other aspects, like I think being an entrepreneur, it's like we're constantly evolving, and it's like being able to step into uncertainty on a day-to-day basis, day after day. It's like it can be taxing at times. So being able to accept that certainty is not promised, right? It's like uncertainty will always be there, and there will always be fear to surmount, and that's a perpetual process. I think ultimately accepting that aspect is like, it never ends. You have to practice self-acceptance every day. Constantly. Because I've gone to places where I feel like holistically I've accepted everything and I'm just on a stride. I feel like we probably all have. We're just lit up. Like I know exactly what's coming next. I know where to go. I know what obstacles are coming and how to surmount them, etc. Everyone's kind of had that period of life, or like maybe has had like glimpses of it, but it's a perpetual day-to-day process. If you put your foot off the gas, it's like you're going to degrade, right? And they say like stagnation is the predecessor to degradation. So like just being like just not being able to continually pursue that excellence and that acceptance is ultimately what I think will make it stagnant.
Yeah.
Right. So in a work setting, still working on self-acceptance. In a backflip setting, fully self-accepting. Yeah.
I'm still trying to like figure out my identity as like an entrepreneur, and like the psychedelics and all this, and like how I want to show up as like in my entire career.
Yeah.
But I think this podcast honestly has helped a lot.
It's
and
great.
Also leading a team, because prior to this it was just me like freelancing essentially.
Yeah, you're just a little
now we have like 15 people, and I'm like, okay, like how can I accept myself so that I can also bring confidence to the team, and we can surmount and face that fear or that uncertainty head on together.
For sure. We're keep on talking about self-acceptance, and I'm thinking about the Vine where the guy with the chicken, he's like wearing underwear and he's like, love yourself.
Yeah.
Zipped yourself.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah. What about you? What sort of aspects do you think that you're still working on self-acceptance?
Areas that I'm confident, I feel like a little bit on the opposite end. Like I feel like I'm very confident in a work setting. I feel like it's a lot of unknown, but due to what I was raised in, like the chameleon-esque nature, I do well in those situations. And if someone kind of puts me on the spot, I'll try my best to be able to respond with the information that's given, or at least present in a way that is as confident as possible. And then I could, shut the laptop and be like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
But still like show up with a confident face, and I think again, it's like fake it till you make it. Where I feel like I need more support and supporting myself and being easier on myself, or just being accepting of myself, is in a relational dynamic and like a interpersonal, like a romantic setting.
Yeah.
For the longest time, throughout my first 18 years, I never saw a healthy, positive relationship, right? My mother raised me, unfortunately, because she was working through her own stuff, where she would constantly speak negatively about like the men in her life, or like any of the people that she's kind of been with, right? And that's kind of her journey and what she's gone through. But I've always had this thought of like, I really do not want to recreate an unhealthy relational pattern that I've seen that like not just affects two people, but it affects like anyone around them. And that's somewhere where I haven't really shown up like authentically, and I don't know what that necessarily is. And out of all the elements that you mentioned, when I think about like a love situation, I'm like shaking in my boots. I'm like, how do I show up? What does that look like? Who am I? So it's funny how in certain areas you're like more than confident and more than self-accepting. I could get up there and do it, a TED talk in front of 400 people. Like, let's run that. I'll do it again. Like, and I landed it, I feel like relatively well at the time. But in like a dating sense, I'm like, I feel like an 8-year-old child again, and it's like, all right, go in there and accept that person, love that person, and try to like parent yourself in a way, and show that person love. So still working on that element, but I think everyone's a bit of a work in progress, and that's where I'm trying to put some energy towards.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. I think it's good awareness, being able to see your strengths and your weaknesses and those multifaceted aspects of how to be holistically self-accepting. What about for you, Zohreh? What sort of aspects do you find self-acceptance, and which ones are you looking to cultivate?
I think the same as Elijah, actually. When he was talking, I was like, oh, that's me.
Yeah,
no
I
way.
agree with that too.
Really?
Probably more so than the work, honestly, for me. It's like, I think the relationship.
Okay, so break that down for us.
Yeah, relationship. Because I've had quite a, bad experience in the past.
Okay, can you explain your bad experience?
When I was married, just like with men, so I think I've put like a wall up.
Yeah.
And I might start something, but I will end it,
Why
when
will
it
you
gets
end it?
to I just don't want it to come in like I feel like the 2 long-term relationships that I had in the past stopped me from doing a lot of things, like stopped me from moving forward in my life.
Do you feel like the relationship stopped you, or was it you stopping yourself? Like, was it the guy that came in and kind of stopped it, or?
I'm going to take some responsibility. I allowed it.
Okay.
But
It was a facet.
Yeah. It was, huh?
Like a contributing factor. Like,
Yeah. So like, right now I'm like protecting myself, and I just want to focus on my career, and I don't want anyone to come in between it.
Yeah.
So, maybe one day Prince Charming will come along.
Zohreh is looking for suitors, listeners.
Yeah, this is a request.
Yeah, exactly. Live. All right, we have dating option number 1
single.
coming through door. That would be crazy if we just had like 3 suitors outside and be like, actually, Zohreh,
I just feel like
today.
The men that I've attracted have been very like narcissistic,
Oh, so you have a type.
Yeah.
But I think
that's another thing, being another thing about self-acceptance. When you're with a toxic person, when you have a relationship with a toxic person, he's not or she's not gonna allow you to have self-acceptance.
Why is that?
Because it's not that they're doing it on purpose.
Like consciously?
Yeah. But but they sometimes are scared to lose you. So they say things like, you won't be able to do that, or you won't be able to do this, and it's a fact.
They dim your light.
Yeah, they did. So that if you're already like, you have confidence issues, that's gonna make it worse. This person you love, you live with, you see all the time, keeps telling you that you're not good enough, you're not gonna be able to do it or make it, or so you have to get rid of all these toxic people.
True. Because I feel like with self-acceptance, having a good squad around you is so important, or going silent. Like during my Paul Blart days as the mall cop and working for security, I didn't talk to anybody. I deleted all social media. I just went in and I was like, I want to hear my own voice. So being able to either listen to your own voice or have a really good squad around you that fully loves you and accepts you for who you are, I think helps you accept yourself.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned something important too, is that ultimately you obviously had your light dimmed, but you had to stand up for yourself, and you allowed it to some extent, right? In that time frame when maybe you wanted to do something and pursue something, you were told you can't, and then you continued to stay. I feel like that's where a lot of people, at least speaking for myself, beat myself up about it. Like, why didn't I not supersede that fear, right? And why didn't I set those boundaries? And I feel like that's a really difficult thing to do, is set those boundaries and have enough self-love and self-acceptance to say, you know what, I don't care what you tell me, but I don't need this energy in my life, and being able to disseminate that negativity. So I think that's another really important aspect to accepting yourself.
And some people are scared to leave because money, or they think they can't make it. Or I know for a fact the universe works in mysterious ways, and if you move forward and do what's right for you, the universe brings you people like angels into your life, and it's a fact. I promise you, the universe will send you angels, but you have to be alert to when they
Mm-hmm.
come. You have to accept them and talk to them and welcome them.
Take the jump.
And it's happened to me many times. Every time I've been in a bad situation, someone has come into my life and held my hand. I'll give you an example. I was in a very bad situation at one point, and that's when Elijah called me up, said, I want to come see you at the house. He came over and he said, Zohreh, come work with us, with me and Danny, And I said to myself, I met him for a reason, He's been there for me. So I need to trust the universe and go with it, which I did.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did.
So are we. Yeah, we wouldn't be here without you, So glad that you took that leap of faith.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, to your point, Zohreh, a familiar hell, the idea is nicer than a unfamiliar heaven.
Yeah.
And it's easier to stay in these patterns and to what versus to step out. But that step out is trusting yourself, and trusting yourself is accepting yourself, because you're like, yo, I can show up, I can do this, I can walk away. It gives you power. So you mentioned with the relational dynamic, relationships, it's something that is a little bit harder for you to do the self-acceptance. Where are areas where you're like, no, I accept myself full on, that's who I am, and you show up confident?
My work ethics, I think I'm very happy, and I know I'm in a good place with my work ethics.
We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And then being a good mom.
Okay, tell me about that. I was thinking, I'm glad you landed that telepathically.
My kids are great. They're warm, kind, empathetic. They speak out. They're very sweet and polite, and I'm just proud that I was part of raising them and making them who they are, and I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that. So that's one of the things I love about myself. and having great friends. You know, I chose good people in my life, and I think that's one of the best things that anyone can do, having, you know, good friends, surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you to do better.
And
you know,
accept
like
yourself.
you and Elijah, both of you really pushed me, and that was, yeah, one of the best decisions I've made. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you mentioned like having good friends, obviously we talked about how when someone who's toxic or dimming your light can like really reduce your self-acceptance, good friends can do the opposite of that. I think both of you have done that for me too in a lot of different facets. But I think ultimately to be able to cultivate that circle of good friends, like you need to be able to step into the unknown and face that fear, because it is uncomfortable sometimes, just like approaching people who maybe you have that instinct that they might be a good friend, or you know, you follow this person and just sending them a DM, what have you. Like taking that step, that leap of faith to be able to establish that connection can be really daunting at times, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
100%, yeah. Self-acceptance again shows up in many different forms, and I just think starting that process is like really the self-discovery phase, you know?
Yeah.
Are there times that you feel like you've disrespected yourself, and have you learned self-acceptance through disrespecting yourself?
I mean, to answer the first question, 100%. I feel like when it comes to just being frivolous, I guess, whether it's intimately with others or with different substances, alcohol, what have you, like I feel like that's ultimately a sign of disrespect. You know, I grew up in the Mormon religion, and they say the body is a temple, and when you disrespect your body, you're disrespecting yourself. And I think being able to like learn from that it can be difficult, because sometimes you get into this cycle of almost compounding the disrespect because you have shame about it as well, right? And you're not willing to really look at it and face that fear. But for me, I think being as realistic with yourself in terms of your strengths and weaknesses is really what at least allowed me to kind of work through that phase of maybe drinking a little too much or partying a little too much, or just being like a degenerate, quite frankly, you know, and being able to stabilize myself and find other activities that give me that sort of connection that I'm ultimately looking for through those activities, right? Whether it's pickleball or yoga or whatever it might be, replacing those methods of connection with more positive ones that are more sustainable ultimately.
Yeah. Do you need to disrespect yourself to go through the cycle of guilt and shame to then accept yourself? Is there an inherent part?
I feel like it's
You know what I mean? Like, is it an inherent part of self-acceptance, like doing yourself dirty to then be like, I gotta show up?
I actually don't think so. I think and this is where some people are more privileged than others, like if you have a really solid family unit and really good friends from the get-go, I feel like they can guide you into accepting yourself without you having to steer down the wrong path per se, right? That doesn't mean that if you have a good family unit and good friends that you're not going to, but I've definitely seen people who have kind of stayed on the straight and narrow, if you will, and didn't need to go explore the depths and the narrows of darkness or hedonic pleasures or being frivolous or an addict, what have you, right? That had that strong family unit. So I think that's a huge component to it. But then also I've seen people that came from, you know, the worst places and then also were super disciplined. So, you know, and made it so that they didn't have to go through those, you know, trauma cycles, if you will. So I don't think that it's actually a prerequisite to self-acceptance, quite frankly. I don't think the darkness is a prerequisite, although I do think it can be a huge catalyst for it, right? It could be like a slingshot effect too in some regard. What about you? Do you think that it's necessary?
I learned by doing. The thing that I've been saying, I don't know, for some reason for the past 48 hours is like banging your head against the wall, wiping off the dry blood, and then like finding a new path. And that's usually my way that I do things, for better or for worse, to be honest. So I think that there were definitely times where I've like I think self-disrespect is like really tough, like a tough way to present it, because that's like connotates to like, I don't know, maybe like sleeping around or doing all these drugs or things like that. Where like I think you could like a lack of self-respect or disrespecting yourself could be like a boundaries thing, right? Where you're negotiating boundaries. I think overall for self-acceptance, like or just with balance in general and a level of like respect to disrespect and then finding a balance, I think sometimes you have to overextend to find out who you are.
Yeah.
And like the example that I think about was like coming out to college and then being the club promoter. And then for the longest time, I like wanted all these friends. And I remember it was like one of my last nights promoting 250 people. I remember looking at my phone and there was like 300 texts that were received within like maybe a 90-minute period. And I was like, this is what a local celebrity feels like. And then I doubled down and I was like, I looked inwards and I was like, I feel miserable. I feel like I am lacking connection now. I feel like no one even knows who I am. It's just this idea of who I've painted out to be, right? And in that sense, did I disrespect myself because I wasn't being authentic? Or was I trying to strive for something that I really wanted and realize that it wasn't authentic to me? And within that, I peeled back and I started to think about, who are my real friends that are going to show up? Who are the ones that are looking at me being like, you're kind of acting like an asshole right now. And me being like, yeah, you're right. I am. And is that a level of disrespecting myself, or is it me just kind of going through the process of self-acceptance?
Yeah, you could really see it either way. I feel like I personally had to go through a lot of disrespect to myself to learn how to, respect myself. And I'm still working on it. Like I said, it's a daily thing. It never ends. You can get to a certain place, but it's perpetual.
In different
I feel
facets.
like that honestly can be daunting to some people. But once you accept it, it's like it never ends until you die. You have to consistently practice. What about you, Zohreh?
Have you disrespected yourself to then find respect?
I think I've disrespected myself. I think I disrespected myself staying in a relationship that didn't serve me at all. But I think I did because, my mom was a single mom and I didn't want to be that single mom. So I stayed and I tried and I tried for the kids, until one day I was like, okay, this is not healthy for the kids, it's so toxic. So that's when I decided, that I need to respect myself and leave, but I don't know if it was because I was respecting myself or if it was maybe I was worried about the kids more than myself,
Isn't that funny that it's like, step on me all day, disrespect me, but then you see something else that you really love and care about, and then you're like, no, not that.
Be brave and put your foot down one time and see what happens. Then you'll be like, okay, I like this. I'm going to do this again and again and again. Because when you respect yourself, everyone around you is going to respect you, and you're going to have a different, outcome with relationships, when you have boundaries and
standards,
exactly.
Yeah. And when you were in that divorce and like kind of seeing what you saw or like going through kind of that experience, what would you say to other people that are maybe like there now, whether it's a bad relationship or maybe they're in a marriage and they want to start to accept themselves more?
If they're in a toxic marriage, first thing I would do is leave that person.
Hit the eject button.
Get
out.
That person. You're going to find someone else in the future that's going to respect you and love you. But if you don't, doesn't matter. You're gonna make it. You're gonna meet angels like I did. They're gonna hold your hands and you're gonna make it. You're gonna find your path. Just be positive. Trust. Just trust the universe, and then they'll bring you whatever you need at the time.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because like ultimately everyone is searching for like intimacy and connection. Like that's what makes you feel fulfilled as a human being. Like, and that's why anyone is trying to get the status, is trying to have the, multi-million-dollar business, whatever it is because they want to feel seen and they want to feel connected to others. Right. And so if you're maybe not feeling that sense of connection in your existing relationship, being able to hit the eject button, hit pause, and then be able to find it in other aspects is also, I think,
Huge.
a really good strategy.
Especially when you derive your value from another person. Like there's independence, then there's interdependence, and then there's full dependency. Codependency.
Yeah.
But if you have that type of dynamic or relationship where you're deriving that self-acceptance through someone else's eyes because they're accepting you, we're in a tough spot. Right? Because that means that you are viewing them and deriving that value from yourself. And I think in certain instances, it's okay. Like I often talk about my friends where it's like, not that I want them to accept me, but I really value their opinion. And I'm like, yo, shoot me straight. How am I seeing this? Because I might be blind, right? But being able to come back to myself and be centered and be like, yo, how did I show up there? Or like, am I deriving my value based off of someone else's acceptance of me? And am I changing the way that I need to show up because of that? You know?
Yeah, those are all really good questions to ask yourself in order to really derive whether or not you are cultivating that acceptance or getting it from others, you know?
Yeah. Because even like the parental side of things, like trying to please the parents, I feel like so many people go through this and like deriving self-acceptance from your parents, right? And you being a parent, like the kids really look to you. Like I went through 2 really serious like breaks, like I don't want to say parental estrangements, but one with my dad and one with my mom, where I derived a lot of my value through them. And then there was like 2 breaking moments where like that kind of snapped. And I was like, listen, if I'm the only one that needs to accept myself, because it's like there's a certain point where it's like this is my fucking life now and I got to show up, and if I'm proud of myself and if I like the way that I'm showing up, like that's all you could really do, right? But deriving acceptance from your parents, I feel like also is a huge factor, and a lot of people's like idea of like their compass on how they accept themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you feel the same, Danny, about just like parental acceptance?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to parental acceptance, I think it was like my parents obviously were a huge factor in that. And like, that's why I paid my way through school. I just wanted to make them proud, especially as a first generation American. Like my parents came here and, you know, risked and sacrificed everything to give me a life in the States, you know? And so like, that was like my big goal. And I did that. And then I think to your point, once I did, I was like, why did I even go to school? I was like an entrepreneur at the time. I still am. Like I never used my degree, you know? And so I was like, I just definitely did that and invested all that time and money into someone else's wishes. And looking back at it, I'm not like sad that I did, because it gave them that degree of like satisfaction. And ultimately, I think it was worth it, quite frankly, for just that alone. Right. But I do think that there is like a degree of like shame in terms of like, when I was raised in being Mormon as well, and like stepping out of that, now working in the psychedelic industry and what have you. And I feel like now my family is really proud of me because I see the application of these treatments and with my mother's issues, etc. But it took a really big, to your point, a break where I had to be like, look, I believe in this and I have an intuition that this is like the path and it's going to facilitate a lot of healing for others. And there was kind of like that judgment, or like, what is Danny doing? Like working on this stuff. It was just a lot of unknowns for them, you know? So I had to take that jump. And I think it's intrinsic, especially for people, like I said, that, you know, are like first generation immigrants or whatever it is. Like it's definitely a factor for sure.
Do you feel like you're still looking or searching for acceptance with your parents and any other elements or areas in your life?
Oh yeah, I mean, every time I speak with my parents, they're always like, where's your wife, Daniel? Where's your girlfriend? And that's another aspect. When I was like younger, I was really dialed in on my academics, and I was really dialed in on relationships too. Like I was constantly in relationships from when I was 17 up until 23. I had not been single for longer than a few months, you know, and it was constantly a primary focus in my life. And I've really, to Zohreh's point, like taken a step back on that and found intimacy in other regards and connection, right? Where it's like, now I'm building this business and I have these angels around me that's supporting me in my mission. But I had to like be able to take a step back on that and know that like, okay, this is a phase of life where I have to work on myself and my mission and my career and find clarity before introducing someone else to the mix. Being able to cultivate that self-acceptance, find my boundaries, find my standards, so that way I can move forward and have a life that's sustainable, and not just pleasurable.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you deal with like those calls when they're like, yo, where's your wife at? Like, how does that make you feel?
It does make me feel a little disappointed, because I want to make my parents proud, for sure. I think that most people do, and I love them, and like I said, they sacrifice so much for me. But ultimately, like, just like with the psychedelic startup that we're working on, I know that there will be this phase of like, oh, Danny's single, like, we want another grandchild, like, come on, Danny. And then, because I'm patient and I'm cultivating the other pillars of my life, when I do find that person, right, then I will be able to bring someone into the family that has that purity and the standards and the values that we uphold, and not someone who maybe was bringing that temporary pleasure, or like that checkbox of like, okay, Danny's got a girlfriend, cool, like, you know what I mean? So instead of just ticking that box, finding someone who will redefine the box and make it beautiful and prosperous and blossom, and be able to like carry down a legacy and a familial lineage that like I'm proud of, ultimately. But it takes patience, and it takes being able to like be alone, right? And ultimately, like I said, we're all searching for a connection. So being able to find that within yourself is so important, otherwise you're never going to really achieve a sustainable life that you want to live.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you want to be with someone that raises you and compliments you. That's the whole point, there's so, and the only time you find someone that is the right person is when you're in a good place, when you've
raising yourself and complimenting yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's when you attract the right people. When you're in a bad place, you don't attract the right people.
Yeah. You don't want to do it out of desperation, or just because your family wants you to do it, because that will honestly make things a lot worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's with anything, even like job, like lawyer or doctor, like you're trying to show up for other people versus showing up for yourself authentically. And when you do that, your angel's going to come in. And if that angel is meant to spend the rest of their lives with you, then, that's the perfect timing. Zohreh, have you, now being a bit older and having your own kids that like are graduating in college, do you still feel like you have to like gain acceptance from your mother? Like, are there times where this like goes away, or is it like for the rest of your life?
I don't feel that anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't feel that anymore. I mean, she she doesn't live here. We FaceTime every day, every morning. Yeah, she's in Dubai, so we cute. FaceTime every morning, and she always makes me feel good. She always compliments me, and she gets upset quickly over little things, and drives me crazy.
Mothers.
But she always makes me feel good these days.
Okay.
So
and do you ever think about like how your kids could potentially be deriving self-acceptance based off of your acceptance of them?
So when you guys were talking about that, I was like, because just recently, Layla's graduated from UCLA, and she's looking for a job, and I keep pushing her to study for her LSAT, and it's only because of what I've been through, and I know that studying law is huge. It's going to help you in every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
No one will mess with you if you're a lawyer. No one's going to fuck with you.
Most parents are like, hop into jujitsu or martial arts. You're like, go get a law degree.
Yeah.
So I was like, Layla, go study law. No one's going to fuck with you. Like you walk into a room, everyone's going to shit in their pants. Like you can use it in business, you can work for any company.
I mean, you're not wrong, honestly. Like, I feel like a law degree right now would be great for us, no matter what the application is, it really is actually a pretty good foundation.
Yeah. And she's getting annoyed with me because I keep repeating myself. But it's ultimately her, her choice, and she has her path. I'm just, I just don't want her to go through what I went through. I want her to be independent. I want her to make money.
Yeah.
I don't want her to rely on anybody, be dependent on anyone. So, yeah.
That makes sense. And I think like it's honestly, to Elijah's point, it's like it's not bad advice, especially if she doesn't have like a divine intuition, like I want to be a baker or something, you know what I mean? And you're like, look, Layla, you're looking for a job, like, you know, like do something that's going to pursue the needle and like pay dividends long term.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And start planting those seeds right now. So I think if you are getting that pressure from whether it's your family or your partner, your friends, etc., and you don't have like a whisper from the universe or an inclination that you need to walk into a ketamine clinic and meet a Zohreh, then it's a good thing to maybe, you know, hit the books and like go start taking classes like you initially did, which inspired that whisper in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Going to UCLA and just doing research and showing up. And even if you're at the bottom of the ladder and you know nothing about it, you're just putting the mask on and like, all right, I guess I'm going to try to be a lawyer. Show up and then something will come to fruition, but you got to show up.
Yeah. And just start something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Just
think all the people who are like the most famous, they have like their little stories, you know, like I use my story every day when I'm talking to clients, you know, and it's a great story. I love it. It's my little journey and everyone has their own narrative and story, you know, and I always see the posts on social media where it's like Colonel Sanders from KFC started at 78, you know, like you could do it at any point, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think self-acceptance is really fascinating when you're looking at it through the eyes of like a parent, because I think sometimes it could come off like they have such high standards for you, so you want to be successful, but it's really their form of love, whether, you know, it's coming out of their mouth like that or it's coming out of their left ear and it's hitting you in the left eye. They genuinely want the best. And they want you to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And Layla is so capable of it, you know. I hope one day she says to herself, you know what, I'm going to do my Ulster, I'm going to go to law school, you know. Maybe if I keep repeating and it gets programmed or imprinted or something.
She's like taking a nap and you're like, Ulster.
Whispering into the subconscious.
Someone walks in, or what the hell are you doing? You're like, I'm trying to get my child to be successful.
I wish my mom pushed me to, you know, studying, get an education. She did say like go to school, but she wasn't like pushy.
Yeah.
She was like, you know, the Persian mom, like, you're beautiful. You're going to marry with a rich guy, which never happened. But, you know, they put that in your head.
Okay.
Like you're going to, like, you're a princess. You're going to get married to a rich person and, you know, you're going to be fine. You don't need an education, which is a big mistake.
Yeah.
You have to teach your girls to be independent and never rely on a man.
Yeah.
Ever.
For sure. And I think, go ahead, sorry.
No,
I was going to say, I agree with you. Like, you need an education, but I think it is also important to have the distinction between like schooling and an education, right? Because an education is ultimately like, if you have the intrinsic desire, like some kids are prodigies, you know, they're like pianists, master pianists, and like, it's just like, what the hell, you know? But they just like had this fascination to go learn and explore. But also there are these like periods of life where maybe you don't know what you're going to do, right? And so having that support or like at least that ideation from your parental figure is really important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're showing up as a parent, you're doing what you need to do. If she's looking for a job, what have you, and you're like, look, do this, like at least try it, you know? It's like, I think that's your responsibility too. So it's good, you know?
To guide.
Guide, exactly.
Some kids, they don't like it.
Yeah, I think also it's sometimes parents like casting their own mistakes onto you or their own like wishes, right? It's like the parents who bring their kids to play like football because like they wanted to be the star quarterback or like they lived it so they want their kids to live it, right? Or it's like with your situation, like you wish that you got that education so you could stand strong and you're like, damn, like you're fighting, you know, your ex-husband and a court and you're like, a law degree would be real nice right now. You know? So like there's situations that you go through in life that you're almost like trying to maybe not make the same mistakes that you did, and almost like you wish that if you knew what you knew, you would have these resources. And I think that that's for like a lot of parents where it's like they want the best for you, but it's also coming out of their eyes for what they think, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes parents don't know about like the new technologies with AI or with like the developments and advancements, but all of it is coming from a really good place. Or if you track it back, it may be somewhere where they maybe misstepped and they're looking to maybe not make the same mistake in your life that they may made in their quote unquote mistake or just path per se.
Yeah. And I think another aspect that you mentioned, Zohreh, was the cultural aspect as well. And the expectations vary widely by the different cultures, right? And I would say in a lot of like Middle Eastern or even South American cultures, yeah, it is kind of like, if you're a woman, like go find a rich guy, you know?
It's crazy.
And then in the States, it's kind of the opposite to the point where you have all these like women that are super powerful, but they might not feel fulfilled because they never had the opportunity to be a mother, you know, and they were just focused on their career only. So really it's like being able to hybridize that in the modern world where, you know, we're so like a melting pot and there's so many different cultures, being able to have the feminine aspect and be able to be taken care of and be nurturing, etc. But then also being able to take care of yourself as well and have
100%.
step into that more of that masculine and having a little bit of both, you know?
And I think men respect women that are, you know, independent, have careers, and they won't mess with them. You know, they're not going to mess with them because they'll be like, she's going to leave me and she'll be fine, you know?
There's a sense of independence versus like you are on an island by yourself because you don't have any like skills or not even no skills, but you don't have a career or something to fall back on. There's almost isolation.
Exactly. And it's like we were saying earlier, Elijah, it's like you're either interdependent, dependent, or codependent, you know? And so finding that happy medium, that interdependence where also the man is able to rely on the woman in some regard, right? I mean, you have like the hyper extent of that where you have like stay-at-home dads, right? But like there's that kind of push-pull and that play and that dance, you know? And I think that's ultimately what the modern world you kind of need to adjust to, you know? Kind of need to be able to play both sides.
When you mentioned the culture thing, I thought about my time in China where you would walk around the parks and they would have like these postings of single men and like trying to basically like marry them off. They call them like little gardens and they would have like all their stats and stuff. It's really crazy actually.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it still happens today. Like no lie.
I want to go to China.
You know what's crazy? In Spain at the Mercado, remember those superstores, like the grocery stores? They have this activity now. Instead of the dating apps, you push a shopping cart around and you put a pineapple upside down in your shopping cart. And if you see someone else with an upside down pineapple, then you know they're single, right? And if you're looking for like a one night stand, then you'll also put a bottle of wine in the shopping cart. And then you walk around.
There's
and
codes.
So then you walk around and then you like, it's like an organic like icebreaker to be able to know like who's, you know,
that's so
looking
cool.
to date.
Zohreh, grab yourself a pineapple and head to Erewhon.
And a bottle of wine.
You're going to Erewhon, baby.
And a
What is
bottle
a
of
Haley
wine.
smoothie,
And a
dude?
champagne.
Don't disrespect yourself though.
Oh my goodness, so funny. But yeah, self-acceptance, that's gonna be real difficult. There are so many like outside factors, whether it's your parents, whether it's yourself. Self-acceptance isn't just outside factors, but like internal factors in different sectors in your life, whether it's a relational dynamic, whether it is a work setting. And I think self-acceptance also is just like coming of age. You know? It's like part of it.
Yeah, give it time. Be patient with yourself. And if you're in a place where you're not maybe like accepting yourself to the fullest in many facets or maybe just one, like allow that period to withstand and face the fear of taking that step, right? Once you hear the whisper from the universe or maybe you have a guiding parent who's giving you idea, like step into the fear, you know? Step by step, stride by stride.
Yeah. If you're lacking self-acceptance in like maybe one area of your life or like a few areas of your life, like don't just harp on it, right? Like work on it, but also know that like you may be really confident in showing up in other ways as well. So like also allow that to lead you to being more confident in these other spaces. Like if you're really good at work, you like rocking that confidence and then try to bring that confidence in other areas. Or if you're confident in a relational dynamic, bring that confidence in other areas and try to accept yourself through. For that.
It's a perpetual process. It never ends, you know? It never ends.
Process.
Yeah. Show up every day and that's 50% of it, honestly.
Choo choo ka-choo.
Agreed.
If you're struggling with mental health or self-acceptance, or you have gone through an experience of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and you're looking for support, we are Cycle Health. We are here to connect you with mental health professionals all throughout the United States. We help connect with therapy, psychiatry, new innovative treatments like transcranial magnetic stimulation using magnets to treat your depression, ketamine, Spravato, insurance-backed versions, cash versions, all of that good stuff. Please give us a call. Zohreh might pick up the phone. She's great. If you hear an accent, say, hey, Zohreh. And we're here to support you in your mental health journey. And we want you to accept yourself, love yourself, because this journey is short and we deserve as much love as possible. And that starts with within.